Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lawyers Who Stream, episode 4, talking to a couple of wonderful people. Gerteg, welcome back to the show.
Hello, everyone.
On for the second time after the lost pilot, where he helped us work out some technical difficulties and get things working. And also joining us for the first time, Hira Galani. Hira is
Right.
a fellow LLM student at the University of Ottawa, has lived in North America, the Middle East, and Europe, and has pursued her legal education in England from the heart of the common law. Excited to share her diverse experiences for internationally trained lawyers in Canada. Gerteg himself also went to school in England. He is a human rights lawyer with a passion for the intersections between medicine and human rights, and is also very passionate about helping out fellow NCA candidates and law students taking their journey in Ontario to become licensed lawyers. So, welcome both of you. Thanks again for coming on. And Gerteg, let's start with you. Describe your journey to where you're at today and where you're currently at in your legal career.
Um, the journey's been long, I would say, to get to where I am today. I started my undergrad at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, in life sciences. Did that for about 5 years, thinking I wanted to go to medical school. Had a change of heart. Wanted to pursue a little bit of policy work instead. Wanted to focus on health policy and make a difference that way. And at the same time, wanted a little break from Ontario as well in Canada. So applied to law school in the UK, got in at a fantastic school, University of Sussex down in Brighton. It's about 30 minutes south of London. Got there, studied there for 2 years, had a wonderful experience, came back to Canada, wrote my NCA exams, National Accreditation Association, equivalency exams, wrote the bar, articled, got called during the pandemic, just a whole bunch of that. So now that we're here, licensed lawyer as of January 2021, and just working in human rights, employment law, and yeah.
Cool. So Gerteg coming in the part of the first pandemic cohort of lawyers in Ontario. Hira, a member of the second, being called. You mentioned in the pre-show that you're being called soon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your legal education?
Thanks, Teddy. Thanks for having us today as well. So yeah, just like your take said, it's been a long road. I think for me, the trajectory has been, there's been a bit of detours. So I did my undergrad in political science with research specialization from Laurier. And then I went on to do my master's as well in political science, where I focused on international relations and security issues. And then that's kind of when I decided, perhaps having a legal background would help me. It wasn't necessarily I want to be a lawyer. It was more like I have these policy questions that I want to answer, and perhaps a legal basis would be better for that, especially because I wanted to go abroad. I didn't really want to stay in Canada anymore. I think that was kind of like the underlying premise of why I chose England. I wanted to change. I also have family in the UK, so that was a really big factor for me in terms of making my decision. And then when I went to law school, I think that's when I really, it was challenging, but I also really found that I enjoyed it. So that's why I was like, okay, you know what? I want to pursue a legal career. So I came back to Canada and I did the NCA. I did articling with a boutique litigation firm. And then I kind of had this, I guess you could say, crisis of confidence. And then I thought I should go back to school, which is what I'm doing now, either a crisis of confidence or just, finding my footing. I had an interest in, understanding law and tech. So now I'm doing my LLM in that, and just still navigating the waters, I guess. I'm getting calls in a couple of days, and yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
So I'm curious about both your articling experiences, and I'll start with you here. You said that you went to a boutique litigation firm, and after that, you decided to go back and do your master's. What was it like, that process of finding a good match for articling in Ontario, coming from out of country?
Yeah, I think it was very challenging. I did not have any idea how challenging it would be. I was quite ambitious when I first came back. I was networking a lot. I really wanted Toronto. And I was very fortunate to have like informational interviews with a lot of lawyers that just wanted to, help out. Even if I would get a rejection, they were very willing to just, sit down, have a coffee with me when we could have coffee together. But it was a huge learning experience. I think just going through that, just getting shot down that way, and then I decided to stay local because my family is based in Waterloo. So I reached out to the local courthouse, and they suggested some firms. I, interviewed with them, and I think it was all about, what I really learned through that process is to go in with the mindset of wanting to learn something. It's not really about going with the mindset that I want a job. I definitely want to work here, because you're also trying to gauge whether you're a good fit for them and if they're a good fit for you. Like, it's a two-way road. So I think that's what I learned from that. Like with my articling principal, I think we had a conversation, like we were waiting for his partners to come in, and I was just like, the View reminds me of Gotham. And we just had like a lovely chat about Batman then. And then, then I got a call back saying, would you like to work with us? So it worked out. And I think I was very fortunate for the principal that I had.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Gertig, how about you? How did you find your principal?
Yeah, I think my story is somewhat similar. I mean, I started working. My articling experience overall has been a little different than most, so I'll talk about that in a sec. But before I went to law school, I just went in for sort of like a coffee chat, a consult with a senior lawyer who'd been practicing for quite some time, and she focused mainly on human rights and employment. And I told her, I was like, "Hey, look, I want to go to law school. I want to do this work now. My background is in sciences. What do you think? Do you think this is a good fit for me or not?" And she was like, "Yeah, go there, see what you like, and then while you're doing that, you can do a little bit of work for me. If you enjoy employment and human rights law, maybe that could be your area of expertise." So I worked with her over the summers while I was in law school, with no expectation of getting an articling position or a permanent position, after the fact, once I was done my legal education. But once everything was said and done, and, I finished the NCAs and I was sitting for the bar, she offered me a position. She was like, "Hey, we've been working for a while. You have all this experience now. And I think, you can make a difference, and you could be of a lot of help to me as well." So she offered me a part-time position as an articling student back in March or April of last year. And because it was part-time with her, I had to look for sort of like the other part-time, to fill up my full-time articling. So I reached out to people within my network, and fortunately had worked with this real estate lawyer quite some time ago while I was still an undergrad. And he was like, I was looking to hire a full-time legal assistant. But if you're willing to do the work, I can hire you as a part-time, articling student, and it'll likely end up being a lot more than part-time, is what he told me to begin with. It'll likely end up being a lot more than part-time. So you have to put in the hours to sort of learn everything there is to learn about, commercial and residential real estate. But I have an opportunity for you if you're interested. Again, like, I didn't go in with the expectation that I would get hired back. I just took that as a learning opportunity, and sort of balanced both of those concurrently till the end of my articles. So it's been fun.
You mentioned the NCA exams as a part of that. So the National Accreditation Association in Canada, they impose additional requirements on lawyers that were educated abroad. So Grote, could you maybe explain what's involved with these extra examinations that you had to take?
Of course. So every lawyer, international lawyer, every international law student, every like anyone that falls within the legal realm who wants to come practice in Ontario or Canada for that matter has to sort of like get assessed by the Federation of Law Societies of Canada, and the branch underneath the FLSC that focuses on this assessment is the NCA. And what they do is they ask you to submit your resume. They ask you to submit your transcripts and sort of like the courses that you took in law school, and any legal experience that you have outside of that. And on the basis of that assessment, they assign you a number of equivalency or competency exams that you need to write. Now, these exams are pass or fail exams on a number of different subjects. I think there's more than 10 subjects. I don't know here if you know the number, but there's a whole bunch of subjects, torts, contracts, Canadian Constitution, administrative, criminal, public. There's a lot of them. And every individual gets assigned a different number of subjects based on their experience, where they went to law school, and it's an individualized assessment. Mm-hmm. The minimum number of exams that a candidate has to write is 5. And that's regardless of if you've, practiced for 30 years in another country and now you want to practice in Canada, or you're a brand new, lawyer just in your first year of practice in another country. So the minimum number is 5. But depending on where your experience is, like, for example, an international lawyer coming in from India, for example, who's practicing a civil jurisdiction might have to write 7 exams or 9 exams. Or if a law student is coming in and maybe they didn't do so well in law school and contract law, and they took, contract law in an international school, they might have to write contract law as an additional exam on top of the 5 that they must complete. So it's an individualized assessment of certain competency exams that you need to write on varying subjects, and 5 core exams, and the rest of them are electives that you can pick from.
So Hira, what was your experience like doing the NCA exams, doing the assessment while also balancing articling?
So I did the NCAs before you actually have to do the NCAs before you can article.
Oh, my mistake. So the NCAs come
no.
first, then articling, and then the bar is also in there somewhere, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So essentially, once you get accredited, you're kind of like at the same level as a 3L student that just graduated, and you
Gotcha.
can article.
Okay.
But just to add to Gertaig's assessment, which you did a great job of because it is a lot, you can also have courses, from my understanding. If I recall correctly, when I did do the NCAs, if you are not eligible to do the exams, they will recommend that you do a course, and they'll tell you which kind of universities you would be able to get those courses done from. So it's a very, as Gertaig said, it's a very individualized process, and it's very specific to the candidate themselves, whether they will be eligible to write exams or whether they'll be mandated to do courses. And it's only when you're done the NCAs that you can actually article and write the bar exam. So it's quite difficult because you're on a different timeline. Because with I didn't even know about this whole, like, you have to like register for articling or like start looking for it in your like 2L, I believe, and then you're kind of like in the process. Whereas for us, you come back and you're in a whole different kind of pool. So you really gotta be on top of it.
If there's one thing that defines the recruiting experience in Ontario law schools when it comes to articling and summer jobs, they start very, very early. I mean, I know depending on where you end up, some lawyers might have their second year summer job secured by like 3 months into law school. It wasn't so much this year because everything got delayed because of the pandemic, obviously. But depending on how your OCIs go, you might get a summer job lined up like before you're even done the first semester of your second year, and then that turns into your articling position after that. So very, very early, and it sounds like you're coming in even later. So where I was going with that. So depending on what courses you qualify for, an NCA student might end up like going to U of T or Osgoode to take a few courses as well with other law students. Is that right?
Yes. From my understanding, from what I recall, yes, that's correct. But to answer your question, when I was doing the NCA exams, so I was working as a research assistant, I believe. During that time, I also worked as a summer student for Manulife, and I was doing some volunteer work because Laurier now has a program with Sussex University, actually. So I kind of just wanted to be involved with the community as much as I could with like the legal community. And I really believe in assisting any candidates that are currently in it. So that's why I really appreciate you calling us to chat about this, because I think there's a lot of opacity about the process.
Totally.
And it's really difficult to find the answer. It's like pulling teeth, you can call them all the time, and it's just it's very trying to get through the process. So I was juggling those work and doing those exams, and I think it was just, I really missed a sense of community. Like when you're in law school, you have that sense of community. I think being an LLM candidate, you can also probably speak to this, Teddy, we really miss that sense of community even as grad students, so it was really hard to isolate yourself and just do those exams and go to work, and a lot of self-discipline is what it takes. So I spread mine out because I was juggling work while I was doing that. And sometimes it can be, it can be really, it's still like an isolating experience because you're going through this and you see that they're mentioning Lord Denning and Donahue and Stevenson, and you're like, I've done this. Why are they asking me to do this? And yes, there is nuance. There is some things that are different. Like I didn't take Canadian Constitution. You have to go through that. And then, even as lawyers, we're constantly like told to keep up to date. Like now we have Vavilov when it comes to admin as opposed to the previous test. So it's something that I like about law too. Like you're constantly learning. So yeah, that's kind of what my experience was like.
Yeah, it's great to have you two in here to kind of shed some transparency on the subject. If anyone who's watching, by the way, wants to drop a question in the chat, I will see it here, and I'll be able to ask our guests anything that you like. So Gerteg, when preparing for these exams, what's kind of the strategy? I think I personally have experience with the bar exam, and all of us have experience with law school exams. But how did the NCA exams kind of differ in your experience? What was sort of your strategy for tackling them?
So I think the main differentiator between bar exams and NCA exams is that NCA exams aren't multiple choice. I think that's the biggest difference between the two. NCA exams are a lot more like law school exams, where they're application based questions that they present you with a scenario, and you have 3 hours. I think during the pandemic they've now extended to 4 hours to just sort of answer 4, 5, 6 questions in as much length as you possibly can, name dropping as many cases as possibly can, hoping some of them stick. So that's the main difference between the two.
An open book, correct?
Yeah, open book. So you're allowed to take your notes in with you, but my experience and with open book exams is that they don't really make that big a difference. I don't think even with the bar exam, I don't think I referred to my notes as much as I thought I would going into the exam. Yeah, you have notebooks in front of you, but really the timeline that you're working with, the 3 hours, or with the bar exam, whether that's 4 or 7 hours, really boils down to, maybe like a minute 30 per question or minute 45. And that's the amount of time it takes for you to read the question and then read the answers. And before you know it, you have to press it, click, select an answer and move on. So the exams, the NCA exams are open book, but you need to sort of have outlines prepared beforehand of, if a question on, some kind of tort comes up, how will I answer it? What kind of, cases will I have to name drop, or what kind of cases are relevant? Or I think for Canadian constitutional law, I remember someone telling me that there's always a question on interjurisdictional immunity. So make sure you really know, what it is and what kind of cases are relevant and applicable. So most students prepare, I forget what they're called. I think there's a name for them, but like IRACs, templates.
So like case briefs?
Not case briefs exactly, but basically if, let's say, for interjurisdictional immunity, that's the issue. What are the rules that apply to it? How would you apply that, and how would you conclude it? I forget what they're called. There's a name for them.
We used to call them cans.
Oh yes, cans. Cans. That's what they are.
Condensed annotated note sets, I think. And those save my life. So there are these sets of notes are available for these exams as well, I take it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to prepare them, but I mean, I don't know of any resource that exists for students to just purchase them, or,
Yeah. So Hira, did you sort of seek out kind of external resources, or was it very much kind of a self-driven exercise when studying for the exams?
No, I did seek out external resources. I found the NCA tutor to be really helpful, like NCA-tutor. Laurent is really passionate about the work that he does, and I thought that was a really great resource. He provides summaries of the syllabus as well. But I think that, like your take said, there's the NCA provides you with what you should be studying. They'll tell you the textbooks that you should purchase, and they'll tell you a course syllabus, and you basically have to study it yourself. That is imperative, and you should know your notes inside out. You should understand the overarching issues. But for me, the distinction between not only the bar and NCA exams, but it's also when you're internationally trained. I can speak about UK exams. They're very much closed book, except for, I think, criminal. We had our crim code. And for contracts, I believe we were allowed 1-page paper, and they were very applied as well. You had to apply the issues and the rules rather to the case, or to the scenario that you were being asked. And then to have an open book, it was very different. I think for me, because yes, you do have to know your material inside out. You have to know how to navigate through it. Whereas the bar exam, I thought, was a lot more about strategy as opposed to necessarily understanding. Yes, you have to understand very overarching kind of issues. But for the NCAs, I think you have to be able to engage in depth with the material because they're not multiple choice.
Yeah.
So I thought the bar was more strategy, if anything.
Yeah, my criticisms of the bar exam, sort of on that line, could fill a whole other conversation, but we'll push past it for now. A question from the chat from Kay Leo. When you did your, and either of you can jump on this if you want. When you did your law degree abroad, was it ever explained or sort of brought up or talked about beforehand how difficult it can be for a foreign trained lawyer to become licensed in Ontario? Was it ever raised at any point?
Not for me. I don't think I was seeking that kind of feedback anyway. I really wanted to go abroad.
Yeah, I think I think my experience was similar as well. I like a lot of students who do go abroad don't explicitly go with the intention of coming back. Like a lot of universities have Canadian Law Student Societies, CLSS. I think there's the normal abbreviation for that across all universities in the UK, and they sort of provide you with a little bit of context when you come in and to highlight their graduates' experience, alumni experiences of how hard it was, to go back. If students did want to go back to Canada and practice law in whatever province, Vancouver, Ontario, wherever else. But yeah, I think like the focus is very much international legal education, and not, here's like, 5 different challenges that lie ahead of you once you graduate.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guess to kind of put my own spin on the question, were you like kind of made aware of the process at all when you were considering going abroad, like all these business with the exams, or did it all kind of come out later?
I think I got more like related to it when I was coming back and actually thinking of practice. Like I mentioned, I wasn't really going with the intention of becoming a lawyer until I actually went through law school. And then I came back and then I was like, yes, I definitely want to do this. So I think my reasoning as well to go abroad, like you mentioned in the introduction, I do have a background where I moved around a lot. Like I've lived in the Middle East. I grew up in Ottawa. Like I just love traveling. And I think there's a lot to learn when you live in a different country. And I was craving that experience after I finished my first master's. So I don't think I was not aware of it, which is why I'm very passionate about, bringing some transparency, or rather piercing the NCA veil for these kinds of issues,
For sure. JP from the block says, IRAC is right, Gerteg, or FIRAC, facts, issues, ratio, analysis, conclusion. Yeah, we use those acronyms in law school as well, usually referring to exam strategy, making sure that you have all the pieces in there to get all those points. Very cool. So now that you're both about to get called, well, Gerteg, you're already called here, about to get called, what's next for both of you? What are you thinking is on the horizon?
Here, I'll let you go first.
Okay. On the horizon. Well, I'm really excited to do my MRP, and I'll be interning soon with the CCLA, from my understanding.
Sorry, MRP?
And my master's research paper. Sorry.
Oh, okay. And interning with the CCLA, cool. I articled with the CCLA, so I mentioned that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's kind of on the horizon for the spring summer term. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I think for me, the most important thing when it comes to practice, because I do think I would like to go back to the practice, is having a good mentor, and just having a firm or an organization where I think I would really grow and thrive, and being surrounded by that kind of community. Because I think, especially, like I mentioned this before, in the pandemic, we've really sensed a lack of community. So for me, it's about understanding where I would be able to really set my roots. And having gone through the articling experience, I think I definitely know what I don't want to do, which is construction liens. I'm very confident to say that. So yeah, I think I'm still figuring it out, and I'm happy to know what I don't want to do and where my interests do lie. Like I've kind of ascertained that, and I'm looking forward to whatever kind of challenges I'm going to face next, and being confident in that. And that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
And Gerteg, how about you?
I really like that. I was just telling Teddy before we got onto the show about how eliminating things you don't like is equally as important as, having experiences that you do like. So I think that's great. And in terms of, I guess, like what lies for me ahead, it's, I'm I'm enjoying what I do. I'm really liking what I do so far, which is human rights and employment. I would love to continue working in it for as long as it holds my interest. I read this post by this international lawyer on LinkedIn the other day, and he was just talking about career trajectories and how people sort of plan 10, 20, 30 years ahead of time, and they try to stick to that plan as much as possible. And this lawyer, I'm not sure if people will know, his name's Gerald Chan, and he is qualified in three jurisdictions. So he's qualified in the UK, he's qualified in Toronto, and I believe he's either also qualified in New York or Singapore, like one of the two. And he's moved around a lot. So he worked in the UK first, then came to Canada, and then he was like, okay, cool, I've experienced all I wanted to experience. Now I'm going to go work for private equity in Singapore. And his approach to, I guess, career trajectories is that you need to pursue what you're passionate about in the moment, and passions change over time. So I think I really like that approach, and I want to continue, to employ something similar in my professional life. Is, I love employment and human rights so far, so I'll continue to seek opportunities in this field. And if something else catches my eye, I'll, try and pivot towards that.
There are certainly benefits to that flexibility, particularly being, getting yourself called in different jurisdictions, whether that's Canada and America or England and Singapore and Canada. I definitely admire that idea that you can sort of pursue your passion wherever it may lie in the world, and I think that's getting more and more feasible in today's connected world. We're gonna wrap up fairly soon, barring any more questions from the chat. But before we go, I wanted to ask you both. Here you can start. Having been through the process now, what sort of supports would you like to see here in Ontario for NCA candidates that aren't there right now? And we sort of touched on it earlier, but maybe just some closing thoughts on that.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate to say, I think the NCA process needs to be changed. I think a lot, instead of I think Gertag and I discussed this before this conversation, but we were kind of chatting about how they should have a more practical component as opposed to the NCAs. I really, really do hope that they do take that into consideration, perhaps having an LPP, a law practice program, but for NCA candidates. I think having an applied understanding of the law is so imperative. In terms of sources, as opposed to just changing the entire system, I think having more transparency, having open discussions about it. I think it's also imperative for the Canadian legal community to look at other jurisdictions and how they handle international candidates. Like Gertag and I, from my understanding, we're both Canadians, and we both chose to go abroad and we came back. But I always wonder how difficult this process would be for new Canadians. And I think being Canada and welcoming diversity, this is really a time where we should have those conversations and to help new Canadians that have had that for whatever profession they had, albeit, whether it was law or, doctors or medicine, whatever it was, we do see those kind of barriers for them. So I really hope, that we have more transparency and that those who are in the profession can recognize and appreciate that an international candidate comes with so much more to offer than just their credentials that you may not understand the nuance of, but they come with a whole entire culture that they can assist when it comes to the work that they do.
Absolutely. Gertag, any closing thoughts?
I absolutely agree with everything Hira said. And I think the landscape is somewhat changing, especially with, I think Hira also mentioned this briefly before, with partnership programs like Wilfrid Laurier now has a 5-year program with Sussex, the law school that I went to. And it's, 5 years, you get a BA and an LLB, and you come back and you write the NCAs, and then you get into the bar. Seneca has a paralegal program with Sussex where you do, I think it's 5 years, 2 years, you do your paralegal education, or 4 years, 2 years you do your paralegal education, and then another 2 years you do at Sussex, get your LLB, and come back, and now you work as a paralegal and you're qualified as a lawyer at the same time. So I think that landscape is changing as more partnerships are formed across the world, especially with Canadian institutions. So I'm hoping for more support for candidates, given that Canadian universities now have skin in the game. And like Kira said, it can be especially hard for candidates who don't have any experience in Canada, who are moving to Canada as immigrants and have international education that they've practiced in their country for 20, 30 years. So it's tough for them, and I think employers really need to understand that candidates come with more experience than what's on their resume. So.
Right. Thank you both for coming on the show, talking all about your experience and the NCAs. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I am looking forward, Hira, to seeing what you do with the conclusion of your LLM. Gertag, looking forward to hearing about your future career plans. Next week, we'll be back. Naomi Sayers will be coming on next week to talk about her advocacy as an Indigenous lawyer. And we are also now on YouTube for anyone watching. If you missed the broadcast, well, if you missed the broadcast, you won't be hearing this, but generally spread the word that our videos are now going up finally on YouTube the day after they air, so everyone can watch it even if they missed. Yeah, so thank you once again, both of you, and hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Teddy.
You
Thank you,
too.
Hira.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.